Welcome to the Lee Harris Little Queenie podcast series, where we interview people who knew and worked with Lee on stage and in the studio. She was an amazing singer, songwriter, and producer, and this series is dedicated to her memory. We will have episodes from her early days forming Little Queenie and the Percolators to her final studio CD called Waking Up in Dreamland, plus several live recordings. You can learn more about her, listen to her music, look at photos, and more at her website, littlequeenie.com. Today's episode is about the only recorded record by Little Queenie and the Percolators. A side is My Darlin, New Orleans, and the B side is Wild Natives. We have with us keyboardist John Magnie. Together they wrote some great songs and formed Little Queenie and the Percolators. So let's begin with My Darlin, New Orleans, its origin and development into their signature song.
Okay, I want to talk about Lee Harris, Little Queenie, and my life with her. The first thing we got to say about her is just what a fantastic singer she was. Just unlimited with her talent, what she could do with her voice. There are a lot of things that we could talk about with Lee Harris in her whole life. But I want to take one thing in particular, and that is the song, My Darlin, New Orleans. And I have, a couple little sort of like chapter headings here. And this one would be called Destiny. And I'm just, the importance of this song, My Darlin, New Orleans, to Lee in her artistic life. In her artistic life, it was like her most treasured relationship, you could say, and in a way, it was her destination. This song, and I've tried to think of an analogy for it, and I come up with when Marlon Brando met the role of Stanley Kowalski in A Streetcar Named Desire. And that is not only the, role of a lifetime, like this script, this story, this city heading towards Marlon Brando, and they come together, and it's a great story and a great play. But more than that, it's a scene of New Orleans at a certain time. And that's what I don't think it's, elevating this whole look, My Darlin, New Orleans thing too much to say that it wasn't the same thing as Lee coming here, the perfect actress for this part, of My Darlin, New Orleans. Coming together with this amazing poetry of Ron Conchita that just captured everything about New Orleans so well, and Lee being the vocal for that, with her classic New Orleans girl, kind of smart ass, kind of sensual, and always singing a little bit behind the beat, that is where I just think that My Darlin, New Orleans was something that, first of all, defined kind of the rest of her life, as far as she was known as My Darlin, New Orleans. But that it was also a picture of those times in New Orleans when I first got down there from Colorado, come down in '74, and the scene was really just so vibrant First of all, you had the Meters inventing funk music, and then you had this Madonna New Orleans case. Ron Cucci is just really great poet. Kind of came out of the beat poet style, but got together with Ramsey McLean on the bass and Charles Neville on sax, and put music to these words of Ron Cucci, which were just so also perfect. Then at the same time was happening my band with Lil Queenie on the R&B side. So we took the song "My Darlin' New Orleans" and translated it into that style with an electric guitar and some horns and a dynamic, badass little lead singer. So the time between it's like 74 and 80 in New Orleans was really rich, and there were as far as My Darling New Orleans and Lil Queenie, they were just different elements that were wandering around until they found each other. And then there was a creative explosion. It was just one of those times where it all came together.
Let me ask you, did did Ron bring you the lyrics, and then you guys got together with Ramsey and Charles, and more or less did the arrangements and the music on it?
Yes, I wasn't involved with that until after they had written it and were performing it as part of their jazz poetry. Pulled Lee in for the voice on it, and she pulled me in.
That's nice.
I was a jazz aspirer, when I got down there. I check out all the jazz bands, try to play in some of them, but I frankly didn't have the chops. But but I dig the mindset. So that's all that matters.
Yeah, well, that's you do what you do, and you did it well. Period. So on the original 45, did you guys just sort of jam to come up with that little introduction to it?
Oh yeah, that's right. And I would have to credit Tommy Malone with that. I think it was my suggestion to make a like a steel drum sound, and yeah, he came up with that on guitar and that melody and stuff. And of course, that's over Kenneth Levin's amazing drums there.
Yeah, that was definitely that introduction just absolutely sets the song up so well. When you guys went to record it, how did it go?
It was very much live. Yeah, we pretty much cut it live, and then added singing, but even like the sax solo and everything that was live. You know how it was back then. Studios were expensive. You had to
Yeah.
really make the most of your time.
When was the first time the Perks performed the version that was on the 45?
Just kind of melded into each other between these. There were very few jazz poetry gigs. I think there was only like 5 of them altogether. So it just kind of got passed over to Little Queenie and Percolators because we were.
Fortunately.
Yeah. It became pretty much the staple of our material pretty quick.
Oh, yeah. I was just curious what the audience reaction was.
First of all, it's just a great rhythm. That's what you need, especially for a New Orleans song. You just gotta have a good groove. So once you get that going, Lee was different in that she was like really articulate.
Mm-hmm.
Those really fast jazz songs she used to sing and everything. So you got this poem that is, first of all, it's so great because it's so New Orleans, because rhyming my darling with drawling and crawling and crawling, just to have that pronunciation. And of course, Lee knew how to say it right.
It was like pure yet, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I'm telling you, that's so she embodied it.
Oh
That was
yes.
her. That my darling New Orleans.
Yeah. And it's still timeless,
Hmm.
which
Yeah.
is
Oh, but what I get back to her being articulate is that there are a lot of words in there, and it's just such a great description of New Orleans, all the images, and to me, it's kind of like he was coming out of the beat poetry thing, but this was more like Chuck Berry. I mean, there are so many other aspects of Lee's music.
let's play the song, and then after the song, we will talk about the B-side, Wild Natives.
In my funky clothes, to the julep I could hear.
Queenie and the Percolators, My Darlin, New Orleans. So let's talk about Wild Natives, the B-side to the 45.
Yeah, Wild Natives, that was same crew and same recording uh, time as My Darlin. There is a clear inspiration for that to me, which was just like any Friday or Saturday night at Tipitina's. It's like a bunch of wild natives, just going crazy, you know, like they do everywhere, but they kind of do it a little more in New Orleans. A little bit crazier.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was once it get that's totally just about a groove and a feel, and then putting some nonsense lyrics down, and just kind of a party song, really.
It's really a
Yeah.
great song. Great song.
Oh, thank you.
Sure. Now, about the sleeve artwork, that looks a whole lot like you and Lee sitting down and putting that together. Is that what happened?
No, I was not involved with that. That was Lee mostly, but Frank Quintini, Ignant Records. I always liked the name of the record company that came out on.
Where did that name come from?
It's just the idea of, it was used in New Orleans is instead of ignorance,
Right.
this is ignorant, which
Right.
is way high. It's beyond words, beyond intelligence. That's what it is.
Well, we won't analyze it too close, but it was a great name for that for the record label for sure. Because I've had people ask me, "What is that?" So
You just gotta say like ignorant.
Yeah, I said, well, you got to be from New Orleans to understand it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great, and let's play it.
peanuts is getting old. Native heart is a bitter and cold. Well, it must be time for another sacrifice.
Wild Natives, written by John Magnie. A great song by a great band. Thank you so much, John, for being with us here today. Until next time, good night, little Queenie, wherever you are.
Your moon just swelling. Here it comes. Yeah.